There are a ton of different ways that you can present your bait when you are out fishing. And yes, your presentation can make a huge difference in your ability to actually catch fish when you're out there. Take it from somebody who has participated in some really tragic presentation methods in the past. Hi there, I am Stanley, and today I'm going to show you my top 3 rigs. I say top 3 rigs. There are only 3 rigs that I use when I'm out fishing, and I'm going to show you how I put those together, show you why I use them, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a, kind of like a little bit of a bonus 4th one that ties into the 3rd one, and well, just stay tuned, I'll show you what I'm talking about. It's going to be another presentation I'm going to be talking about in just a moment that involves a surgical knot, a surgeon's knot. I don't even know what this thing is actually called. I can't find any information on it online. I just know how to tie it. I will show you how to do that right now because it is going to play heavily into our discussion. For the purposes of this video, we are going to refer to this as a surgeon's knot. However, if there's anybody out there who knows what this thing is actually called, please let me know down in the comments below. I'd kind of like to know what I'm actually doing here. Let me show you how it's done. We're going to pull a loop out of that line. I'm going to make it a little bit longer. We're going to pull a loop off of that line. Now you're going to take this loop and you're going to tie it into a knot over itself. So, just like that. Now before you pull it tight, you're going to take that loop and you're going to run it back through there 2 more times. So a total of like 3 loops through that knot. 2 and 3. And now we're going to tighten it down. That's your surgeon's knot, and there's multiple uses for this. This works just fine the way that it is, and I'm going to show you some tricks with this in just a moment. But another thing you can do to strengthen this is do it 1 more time. So you're going to tie another one. 1, 2, 3. Pull that through. This is what it's going to look like when you're done. You're going to have the 1 knot that's going to be coming off of your leader line, and then you're going to have this 2nd knot right here that reinforces it. The value in doing it twice like this is it allows you to cut this line and it still keeps its strength. So for example, you could cut this right here, and now your knot's going to look like this, and you have that drop shot line coming off of your leader that you can tie a hook onto. Start off with the meat and potatoes of this entire conversation. If you are trying to rig up your bait with the absolute best presentation that is physically possible, the way that you're going to do that is simply by tying on a hook to the end of your leader line. There is nothing about a rig like this that is going to scare off any fish. You are not going to get a better presentation than this. However, there are going to be problems with it. In a perfect world, that is all you are ever going to need to do, is you simply tie on a hook, hook in your bait, and you cast it out there and you catch a bunch of fish. The problem is that you're not always going to be fishing in the best conditions. Oftentimes, you are going to be faced with fishing in currents, or there's going to be waves, or you need the bait to sit on the surface, or you need to make sure that that bait is sitting down on the bottom. And that is why we have these other rigging options. If you're just dealing with some very light current, maybe you just have just the slightest little bit of waves that are pushing in, maybe you're just fighting the fact that your bait keeps trying to swim up to the surface. The easiest thing you can do is simply pinch on a split shot weight onto your line. That'll keep the bait down where you need it to be. If you need to up the ante on this, you're going to use a Carolina rig. You would slip on that bullet weight onto your line before you do anything else. Then you tie on your hook to the end of the line, and you use one of those split shots to hold that weight in place so it doesn't go down to the hook. Another thing that you could do is cut off a length of your leader line, slip the bullet weight onto your main line that's still attached to the rod, tie that line onto a swivel, then tie your leader line back onto the other end of that swivel and tie your hook onto it. It's going to have the same effect as this. Instead of the split shot, you'll have the swivel on there, and that does allow the hook and the leader to swivel around and stuff like that. But this is a real easy way to go about doing the exact same thing. This is called a Carolina rig. Slip the weight on, then tie your hook and pinch on a split shot to however far you want that weight to go. Now, the value of a Carolina rig like this is that it adds a whole lot of weight if you want to keep your bait down on the bottom. It also keeps a direct connection between your rod and the hook itself. There's nothing getting in the way of that line. So if something is sitting there and messing with this, you can feel that on the other end, and you know when to do a hook set if you're going to do, you know, if you're fishing for something where you're waiting to feel that bite. The other valuable aspect of a Carolina rig is that because this can slide up and down, if you're fishing off of a jetty, when that bait goes down there, if it gets hung up in the rocks, the weight can actually be worked loose by, you know, messing with the line and everything. It doesn't work all the time, but it does give you some flexibility when it gets hung up. It works a lot better in the rocks than some of these other rigs we'll be talking about in a moment. Sometimes you are going to be fighting surf and currents that is just far too powerful even for a Carolina rig. And that's where I use a drop shot rig. This is where we are going to be talking about those dropper loops that we were looking at earlier in the video. So the first thing we're going to do is tie a dropper loop into the very end of the line on your rod. There's a really cool trick with this I'm going to show you in just a moment. What we're going to do is we're going to take our weight and you're going to run that loop through the eye on the weight. And then you're going to open it up and just run that weight through it. That's why you need that to be a big loop, because you're going to need it to fit around all of this stuff. And there you go. So that ties on the weight really good at the end of your line. A little bonus tip with this, I always have that surgeon's knot loop at the end of my line because it's a lot easier to pick up and put away at the end of the day. And also, when I travel, I don't like these weights bouncing around and hitting my rod. This loop allows me to remove that weight quick and easy, so I don't have to worry about, you know, messing with all of that nonsense. The weight goes right back into the tackle box, the rod gets put away nice, clean, and I don't have a bunch of dings damaging it all the way home. So once you have that weight on the end of the line like that, now you're going to let that down, and you're going to use that to hold your line steady as you tie your dropper loops. It allows you to measure out where you want it. So say you want that bait that far off of the bottom, you can make that call here. Maybe want it a little shallower. There, we've got our dropper loop. Let's tie our surgeon's knot. And now we've got what's called a dropper loop hanging off of that line. Earlier in the video, I showed you how you could tie that knot one more time and then you could cut that line to tie on your hook. However, in the exact same way that we found it valuable to have the weight itself just looped on with that, you could do the exact same thing with the hook on that loop right there. Take that loop, put it through the eye of the hook, open it up, and then just run the hook through that loop. That's going to hold that hook on just fine for you. Now, the other valuable thing about doing dropper loops like this is that you can tie however many, you know, loops you want up your line, whatever is legal for, you know, where you're at. It also allows you to switch out hooks and switch out weights as needed. Maybe you want to go with lesser weight. Maybe it's a different day. This is a rig that you keep in your line over multiple trips. You can switch out your tackle as needed. Speaking of switching tackle out, I have a little bit of a bonus on the dropper loop for you. This is a little trick that my dad keeps, he keeps hammering me to do this, and I never do it, but it does work. You can take this exact same setup right here, and let's say you don't need the bait to stay in the bottom. Let's say you're fishing for something that's a little higher in the water column. You can also use this instead of with a weight, could tie on a cork. This is going to do the exact opposite of having the weight on there. Instead of the weight holding it down to the bottom, you'll have that popping cork holding it up on the surface. Personally, when I'm doing a rig, I prefer these guys because you can just clamp them onto the line at whatever distance you want it up and down for however deep you want that hook. But there are some species that I want to fish for which like to hang out maybe 10 or 12 feet down under the surface. Not on the bottom, but it's really hard to put a popping cork 12 feet up your line and cast that out where you need it to go. That's where this becomes really valuable, because if you need to get that, say, 8 feet down, you could have this dropper loop be 4 feet and this one be 4 feet, and then when it's hanging off of the surface, you will have the 8 foot of distance that you need. That is a lot easier to cast. If you found this valuable, please consider subscribing. I would really appreciate having you along our journey as we're doing this whole YouTube thing, and I will be doing an entire series of these videos showing everything that I have to share about the knowledge that I've gained fishing on Padre Island and the Texas Gulf Coast for the last, 30 plus years. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate having you here with me. I hope you have a wonderful day. Good luck fishing, and I'll see you in the next video.